Hi, everyone. This is Ellen from the Astrology Journal. I want to tell you a story that I just learned, and I think it is really cool and interesting and relevant to this April 8th solar eclipse that's coming up. Um, the story is about the Iroquois, the founding of the Iroquois Confederacy. So the Iroquois Confederacy is the longest living the democracy in the world. And it is the democracy that the United States based its democracy on. So it's an important chart to consider when you're considering the United States. And the story that I heard today, they gave the date. They actually gave the date of the founding as August 31st, 1142. But that date, I believe, is wrong. They were saying that it happened on a solar eclipse, and the solar eclipse was on August 22nd, 1142, not August 31st. So I think the date that they shared was wrong. And there's an article in earthsky.org by Bruce McClure, who also talked about August 22nd, 1142. So I'm going with that since it happened during the eclipse, and this is the eclipse, the total eclipse that was happening in August in that year. So anyway, so this is a chart for it. And I just want to, before I go over that, I want to just look at this. So this is the a chart that NASA shared. This path here from going from the top left to the across to the bottom right. That is the eclipse path, or was the eclipse path for the August, I think it was the 14th eclipse. August, I'm sorry, not August, October 14th, solar eclipse last year. And you can see that went through the western part of the United States and crossed over in Texas. And then the one coming up on August 8th is again crossing, going up to the right, down from the left and up to the right, going through Texas again and all the way up through kind of these Middle Eastern states, or mid-eastern states, I guess you could call them, and up through the northeastern part of the United States and into Canada. So this date, this founding date, the city that was given in Bruce McClure's article was Victor, New York, for when this happened. And Victor, New York is up here I think it's up here somewhere in the northern, actually, it might be more up here somewhere in the northern part of New York. And so it's going to be crossed over by this eclipse. And I thought that was pretty interesting, something to pay attention to. This cross, obviously, by the way, in Texas is really important. And we know there's a lot going on in Texas. And there's a whole question of, I think they're starting to say we're not going to follow federal law, we're going to follow constitutional law, something like that. So who knows what's going to happen in terms of what democracy looks like in the United States going forward. But anyway, that's a whole different thing, and it's not really what I'm here to talk about, just something to note, I guess, in passing. Anyway, let's look at this chart. So, well, let's tell the story first. So the story of the founding of the Iroquois Confederacy. Before this confederacy was founded, there were 5 tribes. They were warring all the time. Tribes all over the place were warring all the time, and there was this peacemaker that was going through all these different tribes and different bands. Collections of tribes were forming peaceful unions because of this peacemaker, and he made his way to the Iroquois, and 4 of the 5 tribes wanted peace. But there was one holdout, one chief that absolutely did not want it, or one leader. I don't know if they call them chiefs. But anyway, there was one leader who did not want it, and he was described as essentially evil. He was a really dark soul, really vindictive, and revenge, full of revenge and all that kind of stuff. So one story they tell, by the way, this is from a video that I saw. It's a very long video, but in the first, say, 12 minutes of it, they tell this story. So you don't have to listen to much to hear this story. And I will put a link in the show notes for you to listen to it for yourself. So this So when this peacekeeper came around, one of the warriors from this leader's tribe, and the leader's name is Tado Daho, one of the warriors, whose name was Ionwatha, took to this idea of peace, and he started talking about it himself. And the leader, Tado Daho, did not like this at all. And to exact revenge on him for betraying him or something, he had all of his daughters killed one at a time. So that's the kind of person we were talking about. So Ironhuatha obviously had some inner work to do. He still wanted peace, but there was one scene in this video where the peacemaker comes to him and says, hey, if you really want peace, you can't have hate in your heart. It's not going to happen if you have hate in your heart. So he had to resolve his own hatred. So that was a part of the story, and I think that's an important part of the story to think about as we go through these times. We think about changing the world outside of us, but the world outside of us can't change until we change within. And in this solar eclipse chart for April 8th, 2024, there's all this energy going on in Aries. Aries is who am I? Chiron is in Aries. It's hard to see that it's in Aries because there's not enough room, but Chiron and Mercury both are in Aries along with all these other planets. So Chiron is in Aries. The wounded healer is in Aries, the wound to I am. If we don't know who we are, we certainly can't bring about peace. But if we don't know who we are, we're also probably more likely to be prone to anger. And if we're prone to anger, that's telling us in a sense that we're not really connected with who we are. I mean, that's one way. You can talk about anger in many different ways, but that's one way of it. Anger really, is about our boundaries are violated. But why do our boundaries keep getting violated? It's because we don't have clarity about who we are. Because if we did, we would know how to stand for our boundaries. So I am somebody, by the way, who probably has my boundaries violated all the time. I'm not very good at it, but anyway, this is just to say that if we don't know who we are, we can't bring about peace. We have to bring about peace within ourselves if we want to bring about peace within the world. So anyway, that's kind of my mantra, and I'm sticking to it, I guess. So, the Ironwatha kind of resolves his own hatred, and the next thing they talk about is the four leaders. They go to talk to a wise woman, and she says, go talk to Tado Daho and tell him that his tribe will be the keepers of the central fire. And they go, and Tado Daho still wants absolutely nothing to do with it. But when they're there, and where they met was in Victor, according to Bruce McClure, in his article, in earthsky.org, that meeting took place in Victor, New York. So they're talking to him, and during the meeting, and he's a total holdout. He's like, absolutely not. And during the meeting, an eclipse happens, and it lasted 4 minutes. And on the other side of that eclipse, Tado Daho was completely transformed. He was a completely different human being. He was softened. He was peaceful. He wanted peace. He accepted it, and their tribe became the keepers of the central fire. So that is the story of the founding, of the Iroquois Confederacy. And so it's got all these different pieces to it, right? You have to resolve your inner wounds before the outer world can change, right? That's one thing. The other thing is miracles can happen. Like I'm somebody who, I don't really believe in evil. I believe in wound. I believe that some people were just lost to ourselves, and that sometimes compels some of us to do really nasty, ugly things. But I don't believe in evil. And this story kind of confirms for me that that's kind of true. Everybody can change. It's just a matter of, like, here's the thing: if we're not doing our work, if we're not doing our inner work, how can somebody else transform? That's kind of part of the message in this story. For this other leader to transform, this Ironwatha had to do his work, and presumably the other chiefs maybe had to do their work too. I don't know. But so anyway, I just think it's a really powerful story, and you have to know who you are. the Aries chart, the solar eclipse chart the solar eclipse chart for April 8th, 2024 is saying we have to know who we are. And that's the work. And we have to heal our wounds. We have to clear away the time. There's energy to take action, to take initiative. But as we take initiative, there will be things that come up, wounds that come up, old obstacles that come up. And it's our work to clear those so that we can continue to take the next steps. So the south node is opposite here at the handle of this bucket pattern of this chart. The south node is our past. It's in Libra, which is talking about that idea of imbalance. And Libra can be kind of codependent. It can be really so eager to please that it loses connection with itself. And so to the extent that that comes up, at least that, one way to think about this, we really need to bring ourselves back into who am I and what do I care about? What do I stand for? What are my values? Taurus, a lot going on in Taurus too. What are my values? What do I want to establish? Who do I want to be? What do I want to found? What do I want to ground in the world? Right? So that's all going on in this chart. And Mercury is retrograde. It's going to be going back over Chiron, over the eclipse point, over the North Node, and then it's going to turn back over and go through all of that again. And so it's kind of asking the question, what wounds need to be healed? How do I get back to, how do I recover who I am? How do I become who I am? How do I restore myself? How do I, who am I? Mercury asks questions. It's curious. Who am I? It's playful too. So we don't have to be all serious about this. We can be playful in this. But who am I? That's the eclipse point is sort of really kind of pointing the finger at that. Who are we? What action do we take? The action that we take has to arise from who we are, if it's going to be authentic, if it's going to be able to be established. So who are we? That's the big question. And there are wounds that are associated with that, the wounds to I am that are associated with that we need to start, become aware of and start to clear. And I don't think it's that, you must become aware. I think that as we take action, these things will be coming up and we will have the opportunity to clear them, to see them, to face them, to confront them again. There's a movie called Iron Will, and in it there's a scene. So it's about a Alaska sled race in Alaska, and I can't remember what the name of that race is called, but it's a famous race. But anyway, there's this teenage boy. I think he's a teenage boy. Maybe he's younger than that. I can't remember. But his father died in a sled when he was, I think, working a sled, and the sled went into frozen water or something like that, and he ended up drowning. I think that's how it went. And so this kid signs up to do this race, and he's like everyone's laughing at him, right? But ultimately he ends up winning. But there's a point during that race where he has to make a decision to go the long way around and be safe, or go down through like this valley or something where he would have to confront water, like the potential for falling, the sled going into the water. And he chooses to go down that path. And take that path, and he ends up winning. But anyway, so the idea is that it will always come up. Whatever we need to face will always be coming up. And what we need to face right now, according to the energies of this chart, is who am I? And so whatever comes up, that's it's an opportunity for us to kind of get clear on that and to stand our ground. Taurus is about standing our ground and standing our ground in who we are. So anyway, that's part of what I think is going on here. But let's look at this chart. So the Iroquois, the founding of the Iroquois Confederacy. So here we have Pluto. And remember, this is essentially, I never thought about it, but this is an important chart when considering the United States. So Pluto is at 22 degrees, almost 23 degrees of Taurus. And here we have Uranus and Jupiter at 21 and 19 degrees of Taurus. So they are conjunct the Pluto in the founding chart. And we obviously in the United States are going through a very prolonged Pluto return and experiencing all the things that are, coming up around that. A lot of confusion and, lurching and crashing about. But anyway, In addition to that, we have this Uranus-Jupiter conjunction at 21 degrees of Taurus, and Jupiter will be conjuncting Uranus on April 20th. So Jupiter enlarges everything, and it's generally considered to be a positive influence, a benefic, they call it. And so Uranus is expect the unexpected. So possibly we can expect the unexpected that we can expect is something really positive, like what happened in that meeting in Victor, New York, when this evil guy totally has a transformation because of this eclipse that comes around. In the beginnings of astrology back in like Mesopotamia, my understanding is that eclipses were sort of seen as negative omens, as ominous omens, but it doesn't have to be that way. I think in a way it's like, what is our intention? What is the intention we're carrying within us? What are the beliefs that we're holding within us? What is the energy that we have going on? And maybe the eclipses just kind of like, really highlight that, whatever's going on. So anyway, I don't know. That's just something to think about. I like to think, and I think a lot of modern astrologers like to think of eclipses as reset points. And so there's an opportunity for a reset. And that reset might come about because of something really unexpected coming about. And maybe that something unexpected will be a really positive, good thing. In this Iroquois Confederacy chart, Uranus is over here at 20 degrees Scorpio, so it's opposing Pluto. Pluto, by the way, is retrograde in this chart. And there are a lot of retrograde things going on in this chart. Saturn is retrograde, Chiron is retrograde, Mercury is retrograde, and I guess that's it. And the nodes are retrograde. But anyway, so Uranus is opposed Pluto, so it is also opposing. So Jupiter and Uranus here are opposing the Uranus in the Confederacy chart. And so we just passed over in our world today, Uranus passed over the opposition point to the Uranus in the Confederacy chart. So that's a big deal. So there is a lot happening, a lot going on. In this chart, we have let's just look at Pluto. There's so much going on since we had that major transformation, major metamorphosis. We have Pluto squaring the nodes. Pluto at almost 23 degrees of Taurus, squaring the north node in Leo and the south node in Aquarius. And then we have Pluto is actually also in a bisextile relationship with the eclipse, the sun and the moon. And that, did I say biquintile? I meant bisextile. Bisextile has to do with fate and destiny. And it's like what was established within, in a way, is what is fated. What was allowed to be established within is what was fated. And Pluto can represent hate, and hate was overcome in Ayanhuatha. So something else, peace, Taurus, peace, was able to come forward. That's one way to talk about that story. Anyway, Pluto, and Pluto, obviously opposition to Uranus. The south node is in a novile relationship with Chiron, and that novile relationship has to do with the promise of the chart. So if we show up and do the work, then the promise will be, in this case, healing of past wounds. That's one way to think about it. Past shocks and traumas. Aquarius can be traumas. And let's see, there's a whole lot more going on in this chart that I can't really think about right now. So there's the Chiron is, I think, semi-square to Pluto. Chiron is it's almost not quite semi-square. Neptune. Oh, there is actually something. Pluto is actually quindecile Neptune. So a major spiritual transformation, like a birth. I think of that quindecile as like this really intense birth, like going through the birth canal, really intense moment. And that's what that moment was, this major shift that happened. So Anyway, just there's so much more going on in this chart, more than what we see here. I guess it looks like there's a yod pattern here with Chiron at the focal point, and it's involving the eclipse point, and it's involving Neptune. So that's a pretty significant thing. We have a T square here with Pluto and the nodes. I think there's another T square somewhere in here, and Jupiter. And yeah, so Jupiter and Venus and Chiron. So Jupiter and Venus in a T square with Chiron. So a really positive, beneficial healing came about through crisis. Um, anyway, so lots and lots going on. But I think I just wanted to bring this chart to your attention because it came into my attention, and I think it's relevant to what we're going to be experiencing and have been experiencing actually, but we'll be continuing to experience as the year plays out. And this chart, obviously, there is a ton going on. It's a very different chart than what this chart is. This chart is very focused on really mostly just this opposition between the South Node and all of these planets in Aries. So this is like finding the balance. The way we find the balance is to restore ourselves, to reconnect with who we are. Initiate action. When Aries initiates action, it's doing it from within itself, and it's getting feedback so it can understand what out there resonates with who it is inside, and so it can start kind of aligning and finding its path in the world by what resonates, what comes back to it. And the key is to pay attention to that and say no to what isn't right and yes to what is right. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say. I hope this was interesting, helpful, useful. And did I say, I think I said this, that the eclipse will be going over that Victor, New York, which is up here somewhere in the northern part of New York. So I think that's super interesting. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. If you like this, please like. I'd love to know that people like the video and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Okay, take good care. Bye-bye.